Hello and welcome to Talk to Stu with me, Stuart McCoo. In this video, we will be looking at your rights if you should ever find yourself in the position of being invited to an interview under caution in respect of potential benefit fraud. Hopefully, in this video, I will give you enough knowledge so that you will feel confident to deal with that situation should it occur. Before we get into it though, if you find this useful, do remember to like, share and subscribe, and stick with me for further video updates and live Q&A sessions on this channel. Thanks very much. So, benefit fraud is a big concern for a lot of people at the moment. It has been something that has been talked about a lot lately in the press, and part of the reason for that is that the DWP have announced over the past 12 months or so lots of different extra measures to tackle benefit fraud. One of the areas that they're focusing on in particular is disability benefits, which people on disability benefits, and indeed the majority of disability rights activists and organisations that support people with disabilities, one of the things that they're thinking is that this is misplaced, really, because generally speaking, the instances of benefit fraud amongst the disabled are basically zero. So, knowing that, in fact, that is the case, a lot of people are quite worried, understandably, that this might be something that affects them. Another element to all of this is that the DWP have announced as part of this, they will be trawling everybody's bank accounts to spot any discrepancies that might indicate that there's been some sort of issue or potential fraud that they need to investigate further. And so that's another element where we feel that people on all kinds of benefits, not just disability benefits, might be targeted and brought to an interview under caution about these things. So I thought it would be pertinent really just to make this video to explain to people what their rights are when it comes to an interview under caution. A lot of people will find that this is quite a panicky situation, and over the years I've supported a lot of people with these interviews under caution, and there are certain things that, certain mistakes that everybody makes when this comes up. So I'm going to go over a few of these things now so that we know exactly where we stand should something like this crop up. So the first thing is, should you receive a letter, this is what you can expect. The letter is usually sent from the Fraud and Errors Office, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will come from there. It will have been signed by somebody who may refer to themselves as a fraud investigator, but they might also refer to themselves as a benefits inquiry officer or an audit officer, something like that. That's the first thing to look out for. The letter will tell you that you are being invited to an interview under caution. Now, the letter should explain your rights to you and that you have the right to have legal advice on this particular issue and that the interview will be tape recorded. Okay? Now, this is an interview under caution. So what that means is that they're using this interview to gain evidence, verbal evidence from you that could be used to prosecute you. It also means that they suspect you of something for whatever reason. Now, there's multiple reasons that a person could come under suspicion. Now, as I've mentioned, there is this trawling of bank accounts that is set to start happening soon. So it might be that some discrepancies come up with payments that you're receiving, and those could be payments from other sources, not just from the DWP. Particularly that might apply if you're looking at some form of means tested benefit that you're claiming, but indeed it could also relate to capital amounts or what you're doing with the money after it enters your bank. So things like that, where they could just at least raise questions over things. Again, raising questions over things doesn't mean that you have done anything wrong. And indeed, more often than not, with most of these situations, it actually turns out that there is a mistake on the part of the DWP. Other situations that might occur is that you might have been erroneously, that is falsely, accused of benefit fraud by somebody who is known to you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's somebody who's close to you, but a neighbour or somebody who might be aware of your living circumstances. They may be aware that you're on a disability benefit, or guess that you're on a disability benefit, might have observed you going about your day and think that you don't seem disabled to them. This is not hugely common, but it does happen. So that's one thing that could be the case. Another thing that often crops up in fraud situations is where people are falsely accused of housing benefit fraud. This often occurs when somebody might be in a relationship with somebody else and they live at two separate properties, and the one person visits the person who's claiming housing benefit on more than one evening during that week. Neighbours and casual observers might think that that person is visiting more than they should, or that they even indeed live at the property, and so that person might not be paying the right level of council tax, or might not be paying or might be receiving housing benefit when they should not be. In reality, quite often it turns out that people are usually making observations about things, but making those observations incorrectly and not really aware of the full circumstances of what's happening with people. So those are some of the situations that could crop up, but it's not limited to just those things. They're just a few examples of things, certainly that I've come across before. So that's the first thing to bear in mind, is when you get this letter, you must act immediately, okay? Don't panic, okay? You will panic, you'll straight away feel nervous, upset, and all of those things, and that's absolutely fine. But try and put a pin in that for a moment and move on to the next action that I'm going to tell you. So, the second thing that you must do if you receive a letter like this is get legal advice. And you must get that legal advice from a solicitor that specialises in criminal law. Okay? An interview under caution is quite different to other legal situations, such as conveyancing or property disputes or contract disputes, things like that. It's quite a different situation, and a certain level of specialist knowledge needs to be had in order for you to be best advised and best supported in that. So having a criminal solicitor is really the best thing to do. Quite often when people are facing benefit and fraud allegations, they will make the mistake of going into these interviews on their own. The big problem with that is you don't know what evidence or what even the terms of everything are before you enter that room. So things can catch you off guard very easily, or you may end up saying something that to you is innocuous and may even be true, but could be misrepresented or misinterpreted by the people who are taking the interview. And indeed, without somebody there to keep them in check, they can ask leading questions that elicit certain types of answers that give the impression of guilt when there might not actually be any guilt. So that's something that is really important to bear in mind. Okay, so with the criminal advice solicitor being involved, what they have the right to do is request information on your behalf from the DWP ahead of that interview so that they can properly advise you on what to say and how to respond to questions that are raised in the interview. Indeed, during the interview, if the DWP then produce any evidence that hasn't yet been seen, that solicitor has the right to stop the interview and request a recess so that they can sit and talk with you about that evidence and advise you on what to say and how to respond. Many times in these situations, solicitors have advised clients not to say anything at all and to prepare a written statement instead. And in some cases, they've been advised to not answer questions at all. With all that said, you might feel like you maybe just won't attend the interview. That's sort of the right to not say anything, isn't it? That would be a mistake as well. It's better to go to the interview and say nothing during the interview than it is to not attend the interview at all. Okay? How people, particularly in a legal sense, interpret certain behaviours is different. If you show that you're compliant with the interview and that you go along with it in the first place, then that demonstrates to a certain extent that you're willing to engage in the process in a positive way. You do have the right to not answer any questions at all, but that right should only be exercised if you've been advised that that is the right thing to do. Okay? So, very important that you get that solicitor to give you the legal advice you need before you go into that room and to be there with you in that space as well. So, number 3, we don't just want advice from a solicitor. Solicitors are great and they know a lot about this particular kind of situation, that interview under caution situation, but what they don't know a lot about is benefits and welfare rights. So that's where you will need to get yourself a independent welfare benefits advisor of some kind. Okay, so again, that should be the second phone call you make when you receive this letter. Whether it's to the CAB or whoever is local to you, you must make sure that when you contact them, you tell them that it is an urgent situation, that you need advice as soon as possible, and that you also may require for that welfare benefits advisor to speak with whoever has taken on your case with the solicitor. They will be able to advise you on these things, and it might be that they need to communicate directly with the solicitor to pass on certain bits of information to them so that the solicitor knows exactly what it is that they're going to be dealing with. Equally, it's good for the solicitor to have an open line of communication, because once the evidence is presented to them, then they may themselves have questions which they can raise directly with that welfare benefits officer. Obviously, you need to act on that very quickly, because most welfare benefits officers are few and far between, and indeed they have long waiting lists. Most organisations that provide welfare benefits advice tend to have some form of triage system and look for the most pressing or emergency kind of situations to see who should be prioritised over somebody else. So it may well be that even if there is a long waiting list, that you'll be moved up that waiting list in time to be able to get you the advice that you need. That said, there are a lot of internet resources to get the advice you need as well. So should you find that you're in a position where you don't have access to that kind of support, it may be that you are under your own steam able to find those things out as well. The fourth thing that you need to think about, particularly if you have a learning disability or mental health condition that impairs your cognitive functions, is it might be that you need to have an appropriate adult with you there as well. So most local authorities do provide some form of appropriate adult scheme, some form of advocacy service local to you that can do that. So do make sure you check into those things as well. And again, this is something that a welfare benefits advisor should be able to support you with and point you in the right direction for. Now, a very important thing to remember is that local authorities and the DWP are not allowed to force you to come to an interview under caution by doing things like suspending your benefits. If they should engage in any kind of activity like that, then that is something that you can challenge. So do make sure that you do that. Again, this is something that you may need support from a welfare benefits advisor with. There are different ways of challenging it. Sometimes it can be done directly if what you've been sent is some form of decision letter in the form of a sanction. There will be a process outlined there for challenging those decisions, whether that be a mandatory reconsideration or appeal, or it might be that you are able to raise a complaint with the relevant department about what has happened if you haven't been given something along the lines of a decision letter with that process outlined. Again, these processes can be a bit complicated, so it is important to get advice depending on which way you go. The final thing really to consider is what comes after the interview. So, with these kind of things, some form of decision will be reached. Now, it may be decided that you are to be prosecuted. That, again, will require extra support from the criminal defence solicitor. It may also be that you are simply sent a letter telling you that you've been overpaid and they expect to reclaim that payment from you. Or it might be that your benefit has been stopped completely. Now, you have the right to appeal against an overpayment decision or a stopping benefit decision to an independent tribunal. And no matter how weak you think your case is, you should always appeal. Okay? If you know that you didn't do anything wrong, then you should appeal. If you feel that maybe you didn't do anything wrong, you should appeal. If you're a bit concerned as to why this has happened and you're confused about it because it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, you should appeal. If you're feeling beaten down and miserable, you should appeal. Okay? In all situations, appeal. The reason for that is twofold. Firstly, the DWP make a huge number of mistakes when it comes to a process like this. They often will engage in activities that are could be considered an error in the actual application of the interview under caution, so that in itself may weaken their case, but also in the actual administration of the benefit. Because the benefit system is so complicated, there are quite often things that happen behind the scenes that we're not aware of that indeed show that the DWP have not handled things correctly in the very first place. So that could be things like how they've communicated with you, how they've communicated with each other behind the scenes. It could be, what payments they've made. Maybe they've missed information that you've communicated with them. Things like that. One of the ways that we might find out what's exactly been going on behind the scenes is to put in a subject access request to the DWP requesting all of your data. Now, obviously, I keep saying the DWP quite a lot because mostly it is the DWP that do this, but it could equally be your local authority as well, as most local authorities administer housing benefit and council tax. this is one of those situations where, again, the welfare benefits advisor will come in very useful, because they will be able to look through those things and spot any discrepancies, or see if there's any areas where the DWP has, or the local authority has made mistakes, missed things out, or used evidence that on its own might seem incriminating, but combined with other evidence that they've omitted actually exonerates you, things like that. So it's really important that you appeal, even if you think your case is weak, because more often than not, it's actually the DWP or the local authority who've made the mistake, or as I've said before, it could have come from an erroneous or false report about you being fraudulent, which in fact doesn't have much grounds in itself. So those kind of things. Now, if you are going to be prosecuted, you will receive a bundle of papers telling you this. Don't delay and immediately find that criminal defence solicitor. They can take on your case. Now, you might have watched most of this and be thinking to yourself, I can't afford a criminal defence solicitor. Well, in situations like this, most people are entitled to legal aid with this kind of thing. So it is worth making those inquiries straight away, because the chances are you will probably be entitled to that support at both the interview under caution stage and even the prosecution stage as well. So don't panic on that side of things either. As I say, you must always seek independent expert benefits advice as well. This can be a very complex situation and it will require unpicking. If it does come to a prosecution, there's a lot more time on the table, but what you absolutely have to remember is you must request that appeal within the month. Now, if you've got a very good reason why you can't request that within the month, then for up to 13 months afterwards, it may be that your appeal request will be accepted, but you have to have a very good reason, such as I was in hospital for that period of time and I was unable to do so. Those kind of things. I went off on a holiday probably isn't going to count. Or I was, even if you are very anxious and very scared, you would need some medical evidence to kind of back that up. So if you are in a position where you're panicking about it and you can't bring yourself to face it, those kind of things, then you must speak to your GP or your doctor to make sure that is confirmed. But if at all possible, make sure that you request that appeal within the month. The appeal, like I say, can itself take more time. So once that request has gone in, you've got more time to build your case. Again, if you're being prosecuted, if they've got in touch with you, then there will be a period of time set out before that actually goes through. It may be as short as a month, but more than likely it's going to be 2 to 3 months around the minimum, sometimes longer. So it's really important that you act as quickly as possible in the first instance, because then that gives you breathing room afterwards to get your case together and get all of the people that you need on your side all lined up and ready to go. So that's very important as well. Okay. Now, all of the information that I'm providing you with here today comes from RightsNet. RightsNet is a really useful website for professionals and others as well who are dealing with situations like this or all kinds of benefit related problems. Or just general confusion with benefits, because let's face it, they're extremely confusing for the majority. It is a really good resource, and they've produced this PDF document which tells you everything that I've been telling you today in a slightly more concise format, which I have put a link to in the description below so that you can download it for quick and easy reference. Also, don't be afraid to save this video to your watch later list. just in case these things ever come up and you don't have to then go searching through YouTube to try and find it. So the important takeaway with all of this is get professional advice. Don't go into that interview without having that professional advice first. And if it's an interview under caution, remember you have the right to a criminal defence solicitor advising you on that. Okay. Thanks for watching this. Hopefully that gives you a bit more confidence should anything come up like this in the future. But just remember, the instances of people being accused of benefit fraud are very, very low. So do not panic about it. I can't say if you've done nothing wrong you won't be accused, because it does happen, but it nonetheless is a very rare thing. So please don't panic after watching this video and think, oh my god, this could happen to me tomorrow, because the chances are it won't. Okay, this is hope for the best, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. Don't worry about things until they actually happen. Okay, so it's quite a serious video, and I know a lot of people will be watching this who may have mental health issues or anxiety issues and things like that. But please remember, it is very, very rare at the moment for this to happen to anybody, or for anybody to have to go through this. Okay, so don't panic. All right, but thank you for watching the video. Do stay well, stay safe. If you found this useful, then please do like, share and subscribe. If you do have worries or stresses, anxieties, I've also put a couple of links in the description below so that you can find people who would be able to talk to you, to just, you know, have those conversations and get some of those worries out. Okay, so all the best, and yeah, hope to see you for future videos soon.